Some people don't raise their voice. They don't argue. They don't threaten you. But without saying a single word, they dominate entire rooms. Machiavelli warned us about this silent kind of power, the kind that controls you before you even realize it. The question is, are you using it, or is someone using it on you? Money, generosity, virtue. These are words society has built temples around, preached from pulpits and branded as moral imperatives. From childhood, you are told, share your toys, give to the poor, always help others. But this lesson comes with a hidden leash. Because here is the dark truth. Being generous with money is rarely a virtue. It is a weakness, and those who exploit weakness know it. History is filled with examples of men who gave freely, believed in moral righteousness, and ended up betrayed, drained, and powerless. Consider the Medici family, not for their wealth, but for their frequent political generosity in Florence. Every coin spent to appease allies or forgive debts bought temporary loyalty. But when their resources were strained, former allies turned, plotting against them in whispers and secret alliances. Generosity creates a debt, but rarely the kind you control. Generosity is framed as virtue, but in reality, it is a psychological trap. Societies use morality as a leash. From kings to businessmen, leaders learned early. The one who gives freely is rarely feared, always tested, and eventually manipulated. Giving money is often celebrated publicly, creating a facade of goodwill. People are praised for charity, lauded for gifts, and respected for sacrifices. But praise is cheap. Respect is earned through control, scarcity, and restraint. Historical figures like Marcus Licinius Crassus, the wealthiest man in Rome after the civil wars, learned that giving without strategy leaves you exposed. Crassus's overextension in political favors and financial generosity made him a target for envy and betrayal, culminating in his deadly defeat at Carrhae. This is the first lesson of Chapter 1. Generosity is not a shield, it is a vulnerability. Human psychology is simple. Most people will test boundaries. Generosity signals weakness. Each request, small or large, is a test of limits. You feel compelled to say yes, because society has taught you that refusing is wrong. Look at King Louis XVI of France. He wanted to maintain peace, support his nobles, and ensure the public felt cared for. But his financial generosity, paired with naivety, allowed corruption, manipulation, and waste to spiral out of control. In the end, those around him exploited his good nature to amass power at his expense. His downfall demonstrates the danger of mixing moral generosity with unpreparedness for human greed. Generosity makes you predictable, and predictability is vulnerability. People don't respect what they can predict. They exploit it. This is where most men fail to grasp reality. Money is not just currency. It is psychological leverage. Every transaction communicates a message, whether intentional or not. Spending carelessly, lending freely, or giving unconditionally sends the subconscious signal, I am weak, I can be taken. Contrast this with figures like Andrew Carnegie, whose philanthropy was strategic, controlled, and designed to enhance status, not empower others. He carefully chose when, where, and how to give. Carnegie's public generosity was meticulously calculated to create influence, not dependence. Notice the difference. He remained powerful, while those who gave indiscriminately became servants to their social environment. Machiavelli's warnings are clear. Rulers are rarely overthrown because they are cruel. They are overthrown because they are too generous, too weak, or too trusting. Generosity without strategy erodes authority. In Renaissance Florence, Cosimo de' Medici understood this principle. While he invested in art and public works, he did so to command loyalty and respect, not out of simple goodwill. Contrast him with lesser nobles who gave freely to curry favor. They were often ignored or betrayed when power was tested. Machiavelli would say, "Fear is a tool. Generosity is a trap." The pattern repeats across history. The generous man, the giver, the one who always says yes, is first loved, then used, and finally abandoned. Take Tsar Nicholas II of Russia. His desire to maintain appearances of fairness and care for his people blinded him to the exploitation of his court and the rising unrest of his nation. He gave, he forgave, he tried to appease, yet in return, he faced rebellion and execution. His generosity was not his strength. It was the chain that bound him to his downfall. Even in modern contexts, this remains true. CEOs who constantly give raises without strategic purpose, leaders who fund causes without boundaries, and men who lend without condition, all encounter the same betrayal. Loyalty bought freely is loyalty that disappears at the first opportunity. Now that the illusion of generosity has been dismantled, the mind faces a dangerous awakening. If giving freely destroys authority, then what builds it? This is the gateway to the dark economics of respect, a world where restraint, scarcity, and strategic denial are more powerful than any gift. Once you recognize generosity as a trap, the next step is to learn how to wield money like a weapon, not a sacrificial offering. Now, we step into a darker territory, the economics of respect. Money is no longer a resource. It is a weapon, a signal, and a tool of psychological domination. Because here's the truth few admit. People don't respect those who give. They respect those who control, who withhold, who make others struggle to access what they want. From the streets of Florence to the corridors of Wall Street, one rule remains absolute. Scarcity creates respect. Abundance invites exploitation. Look at the Medici once again. Cosimo de' Medici wasn't admired because he threw gold into the hands of Florence's citizens. He was admired because he dispensed wealth strategically, ensuring his favors were rare and meaningful. Every loan, every investment, every act of generosity carried weight. People didn't just take his money. They calculated how to repay him in influence and loyalty. Contrast this with countless lesser nobles who tried to buy respect by giving freely. Their generosity created expectation, not awe. When the well ran dry, their power evaporated. Scarcity isn't cruel. It's strategic. It teaches others that what you have is valuable, limited, and therefore worth earning respect to access. Even modern moguls understand this. Warren Buffett, one of the richest men in the world, is famously frugal. He doesn't flaunt wealth unnecessarily. He doesn't overgive, and he carefully manages how his money is perceived. The lesson is clear. Control your resources, or someone else will control your reputation and influence through them. Here is where most men fail. They confuse stinginess with ruthlessness. There is a difference between being coldly strategic and being emotionally petty. Strategic stinginess is deliberate, purposeful, and unseen. Emotional generosity is reactive, impulsive, and easily exploited. Consider Benjamin Franklin, whose financial discipline was legendary. Franklin lent money selectively, invested in projects that increased influence, and used scarcity as a tool of leverage. People respected him not because he was wealthy, but because they never knew exactly what he would do next. His restraint created psychological dominance. Contrast this with someone who gives impulsively. Friends, colleagues, even family will drain them without hesitation. They learn to expect, to manipulate, to exploit. That is the trap generosity sets. Predictable kindness invites exploitation. Unpredictable restraint commands authority. Money is never neutral. It is a language of power, and those who speak it fluently dominate. Take Napoleon Bonaparte. He controlled resources meticulously, rewarding loyalty selectively. Troops, allies, and administrators didn't trust him because he gave freely. They feared the consequences of losing his favor. The ability to withhold, to distribute resources with cold calculation, ensured obedience and respect. Even in business, this principle holds. Steve Jobs famously refused to dilute his vision by giving in to demands from investors, employees, or partners. He retained control over his company's resources, creating scarcity in opportunity, but abundance in authority. Jobs' selective generosity, rewarding the right people at the right time, built an empire, while blind giving would have left him powerless. The pattern is consistent. Control money, and you control perception, influence, and respect. Give without strategy, and you are merely a patsy in a world of predators.
Not quite.
Many men cling to the belief that giving creates loyalty. It does, but only temporary loyalty, often shallow and self-serving. Louis XIV of France, the Sun King, understood this principle better than most. He lavished his nobles with gifts, positions, and luxuries, not because he sought their love, but because he needed control. However, the moment he overextended or appeared vulnerable, loyalty crumbled. Many of his courtiers were only loyal to the favor, not the man. Generosity, when unstrategic, doesn't create allegiance. It creates dependency, which can evaporate under pressure. Even in modern corporations, CEOs see this play out daily. Bonuses, perks, and open-handed leadership may temporarily boost morale. But when times get tough, those same employees exploit weakness or abandon ship. Real loyalty is cultivated through boundaries, scarcity, and respect, not gifts or handouts. This is where transformation begins. To wield money like power, you must say no, consistently and without guilt. Every refusal builds authority. Every controlled act of withholding communicates, I am not at your mercy, you are at mine. Consider Andrew Jackson, the 7th President of the United States. He was famously frugal, refusing to indulge his personal desires unnecessarily and maintaining strict control over federal funds. His financial discipline reinforced his political power. By establishing boundaries, he not only protected resources, but protected his influence. Boundaries in finance are not just practical, they are psychological. They tell others, I am not available, I am selective, I am valuable. This is the dark economics of respect. It is not cruel, it is survival. Once you understand the dark economics of respect, a new challenge emerges, the inner resistance. People are conditioned to feel guilt for refusing, for controlling, for withholding. The journey begins here. Restraint is your weapon, scarcity is your armor, and control is your ultimate power. Those who master this path are not merely rich. They are feared, respected, and untouchable. Because mastery is not about how much you give, how much you earn, or how much you own. It is about control, detachment, and calculated action. One of the greatest chains that binds men is guilt. Society has conditioned you to feel shame for refusing, for keeping resources, for withholding what is rightfully expected of you. But guilt is a social leash, a subtle form of psychological control imposed by others to exploit your generosity. Take Tsar Peter the Great of Russia. Peter modernized Russia ruthlessly, often diverting state funds and personal resources to projects that advanced his authority, rather than placating the nobility or masses. Those who expected handouts felt angered, yet Peter never succumbed to guilt. His detachment allowed him to centralize power, conquer enemies, and transform a nation. Proof that power demands the death of unnecessary guilt. To wield money like a weapon, you must kill the emotional reflex that says, "I must give to be liked or loved." Emotional giving is slavery. Calculated withholding is sovereignty. Money spent without strategic purpose is money wasted. Every expenditure must serve a purpose: leverage, influence, or domination. This is the difference between the weak who give freely and the ruthless who command obedience. Consider the Medici family again. But this time, Lorenzo the Magnificent. Lorenzo spent lavishly, yes, but always strategically. Art, patronage, and loans were not acts of kindness. They were investments in loyalty, psychological control, and long-term influence. People never forgot what they owed him. They feared it, they respected it, and that fear cemented his power far more than any casual act of generosity could have. Modern entrepreneurs, like Elon Musk, operate similarly. Investments, partnerships, and even charitable donations are calculated, enhancing his authority and influence while keeping him psychologically untouchable. Every dollar spent is a chess move, never a gift. Giving can be effective, but only when rare, calculated, and psychologically manipulative. Occasional generosity creates shock value, compels reciprocity, and establishes obligation. Take the example of Queen Elizabeth I of England. She dispensed favors and financial gifts sparingly, choosing moments of strategic importance. Nobles and foreign diplomats vied for her attention and resources, knowing that a gift or favor from Elizabeth was rare, valuable, and powerful. It was not love that controlled them. It was the fear of losing her favor. The lesson: give like a predator, not like prey. Make it rare, make it memorable, make it strengthen your control, rather than deplete it. The ultimate weapon in power dynamics is ambiguity. If people cannot predict your resources, behavior, or limits, they cannot exploit you. They must approach you carefully, deferentially, and with respect. Consider Genghis Khan, whose financial strategy was as ruthless as his military conquests. He distributed resources and wealth unpredictably to allies, while hoarding strategically to punish disloyalty. Even the most ambitious generals never knew the Khan's limits, keeping them constantly vigilant and obedient. Similarly, in the modern world, influential figures like Jeff Bezos maintain psychological distance. Their wealth, influence, and priorities remain opaque. This unreadability creates a sphere of power that few dare challenge. Predictability invites exploitation. Mystery commands obedience. This is the final transformation. The man who is untouchable does not need to prove generosity. He does not chase validation. He does not fear isolation. Historical examples abound. Niccolò Machiavelli himself advocated cultivating self-reliance, strategic detachment, and manipulation of perception. He argued that rulers must control resources and appearances to maintain authority. Akbar the Great, the Mughal emperor, exercised strategic generosity to consolidate power, but his true dominance came from psychological independence and calculated resource control, not charity. Modern billionaires like Warren Buffett reinforce their untouchable presence through controlled actions, visible restraint, and a detachment from social pressure. The untouchable man's wealth and influence are not measured in currency alone. They are measured in psychological impact. People fear his decisions respect his boundaries, and obey his influence, not because he gives, but because he controls. Seamless psychological positioning, complete mastery. By now, the path is clear. Generosity destroys authority, restraint builds respect. Strategic control creates untouchable power, transforms your knowledge into dominance. Guilt, impulsive giving, and predictability are your enemies. Scarcity, calculated withholding, and psychological ambiguity are your allies. Master these, and you are no longer at the mercy of society, friends, colleagues, or even enemies. You are the silent power in the room, the one everyone notices, few understand, and no one dares challenge.